Soviet tanks in Maryland? Don't worry, they're in the hands of the U.S. Army. And military specialist Chuck Caro is the first correspondent ever allowed to put them through their paces at the Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground. It's a highly restricted area where Caro was given access to other Russian weapons as well.
This is a Soviet T-54 tank, but these are not the planes of the Ukraine. Instead, it's the Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where the Army maintains a fleet of such vehicles. The unit is the 203rd Military Intelligence Battalion, whose commander, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Peterson, described his unit's mission.
Even though we're a military intelligence battalion, half of my battalion basically has an intelligence mission. The other has a training support mission, which in essence is really a direct and general support maintenance mission for the maintenance and upkeep of the foreign equipment.
The foreign vehicles that the 203rd maintains for training and technical intelligence purposes include Soviet PT-76 amphibious tanks and T-54 and T-55 main battle tanks. Though these are not the very latest in Soviet armor, they represent the great numbers of the types still in the Soviet bloc and Soviet satellite countries. To find out about the strengths and weaknesses of the T-54 series tanks, the battalion's NCOs taught me its gun systems and showed me how to drive it. After stalling it out a couple of times, I drove off with my 32-ton charge to get an idea of what a Soviet tanker would feel. Lessons learned: the T-54 and its more modern sisters are cramped. In fact, most Soviet tankers are under 5'6" because the tank is so small. The tank is not air-conditioned, so combat efficiency on hot days goes down rapidly. The loader in the turret must be left-handed to feed the main gun, a distinct disadvantage. The track systems of these older Soviet tanks are slack. Though this means that they are mechanically more simple, they tend to retard maneuverability. And the fuel tank is located by the second road wheel, offering an anti-tank gunner a vulnerable bullseye. On the other hand, the Soviets have tens of thousands of these and other more modern tanks. Moreover, they are relatively simple to operate compared to sophisticated behemoths like the U.S. M1 Abrams tank. In another building, I was briefed on Soviet tactical communications equipment. The bottom line on all the gear was, despite the fact that the gear was bulky and heavy, it was reliable, especially in very hot climates, where modern U.S. devices using silicon chips tend to fail quickly. Though the Soviets regularly practice with chemical agents in their field exercises and may have used poison gas operationally in places like Afghanistan, their protective gear is a nightmare of Rube Goldberg devices.
It's a full butyl rubber outfit, so it's very, very hot. Everything they have is made out of rubber, as a matter of fact. Their gloves, their boots come up as far as their waist. So they're wearing this rubber outfit, plus their battle dress uniform, plus another protective undergarment that's like long johns underneath that. And so they're going to be very extremely hot.
Using chemical agents against modern Western forces equipped with far less bulky or clumsy gear might be a mistake for the Soviets. Maintaining all this equipment, especially the tanks and armored vehicles, is a difficult job that requires innovative thinking. Where do you get spare parts for a Soviet BTR-60 armored personnel carrier?
We found that we can have some of the, American engines. Detroit diesel is one of the ones that come right to mind. That'll fit some of the Soviet vehicles.
Next came the firing range, where the 203rd had laid out an impressive array of Soviet infantry weapons.
85 millimeter heat grenade, rocket assist, range is 500 on stationary, 300 on moving.
The first weapon I chose was the new Kalashnikov AK-74 assault rifle now being used in Afghanistan. The AK-74's main advantage is that it fires a 5.45 millimeter round, much like the US M16, and hence the assault rifle is slightly lighter and more accurate than the renowned Kalashnikov AK-47.
Right picture.
Next, I tried the classic AK-47. The rifle is not designed for long-range accuracy or tight shot groups. The Soviets believe in lots of automatic fire, followed by aimed semi-automatic to pick off anyone left standing. I tried several versions of the AK-47, including this Hungarian AMD with a short barrel, folding stock, and forward hand grip. Shooting it from the hip, however, was not the best way to lay down accurate fire. Next came the Soviet PK machine gun. It is based on the AK-47 assault rifle, has a rapid firing rate, is accurate, and is 5 pounds lighter than the comparable US M60. However, it is fed by an 8-foot-long non-disintegrating metal link ammunition belt. This means that a Soviet gunner must run on the battlefield with a long iron tail, a definite disadvantage. The last item was the RPG, or rocket-propelled grenade. My instructor took about 2 minutes to brief me, loaded a round, and pulled the safety pin. I cocked the trigger, aimed, and fired. Bullseye. Out of 6 rounds, 5 were direct hits. It is interesting to note that the RPG costs about $200 a round and takes several minutes to learn how to use. The new US AT-4 anti-tank rocket, however, costs about $1,100 a round and takes several hours of instruction to operate correctly. Despite the apparent technological crudeness of these Soviet tanks and other equipment, sources here at Aberdeen warn against U.S. overconfidence. The newest Soviet equipment, they say, is growing in sophistication, equally rugged and reliable, and available in massive numbers. From Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, this is Chuck Caro, CNN, on special assignment.
Don't go away. We'll have more after these messages. Recent terrorist attacks around the world have taught us that these sometimes suicide missions are based on very careful planning. But as our own Joe Trento found out while producing our final story, even the shrewdest planner can apparently be misled. A case in point is when one of today's most infamous terrorists, Abu Nidal, was himself a victim of a reputed con man. Since 1974, Abu Nidal has been linked to one act of terrorism after another. December's airport bombings are only the latest acts of violence credited to him. Nidal always manages to escape. Some say he's had plastic surgery. Others say he is in ill health. But no one has caught him. One man, this man, says he successfully cheated him, however.
One of the younger guys that was involved with the group that I had dealings with, in fact, we even went out for drinks and partied a couple of times, was the famous Abdul Nigal.
This is confidence man Ricardo D. Cespedes. In November of 1974, he was arrested for swindling the Palestine Liberation Organization's New York office out of $29,000 by selling them forged Israeli secrets. Now he is a prisoner in the Delaware County, Pennsylvania jail for more recent crimes. He says Abu Nidal was one of his PLO customers.
What kind of relationship did you have with him?
Buddy relationship.
D. Cespedes said Nidal asked for maps to infiltrate Israel.
He asked me if I could possibly come up with a couple of really good infiltration routes for him that would be excellent. And I did. Then I went down to the United States Coastal Geodesic Survey down in Lower Manhattan, and I bought detailed maps of the Israeli coastline, which then, with the aid of a Minix, I had reduced.
D. Cespedes says as he got to know Nidal during 1974, he learned some of his personal habits.
You said that he had a habit. You told me on the telephone he had a
Yes.
habit. What was the habit?
He enjoyed cocaine, any kind of amphetamine.
Did he ask you to get him some drugs?
That was no problem where we were. He asked me, are they available? I said, yes. He says, I'd like to buy some. I says, fine.
Did he?
Yes. 2.5 grams. And next day he was out.
D. Cespedes' plot against the PLO began in 1974 when PLO leader Yasser Arafat was planning a visit to the United Nations and several other PLO-sponsored events. An unrelated event triggered his idea for the scheme.
In July, there had been a jailbreak at the Federal House of Detention in Manhattan. Some very prominent drug dealers had escaped, and nobody could figure out how they had escaped.
D. Cespedes decided he would wind a twisted tale around this escape and sell it to the PLO as intelligence.
So I cooked up a plan where these people had escaped through aids of religious groups, which it turned out there was a priest involved, and that the Israelis were now hiding them for the purpose that during Arafat's visit, they would disguise themselves as PLO and raid and bomb banks and various targets in New York.
And then the PLO would be blamed for this activity.
Exactly.
An expert forger, D. Cespedes converted some Israeli trade literature into a series of official-looking intelligence documents. He got the jargon of Israeli intelligence operations from a unique source.
And I had been reading a book which gave me most of the information that I needed. It was, book was the Odessa file.
His next step was to lay out the bait.
I had a friend of mine call them, who has a record as a mugger in New York, and tell them that he had mugged an Israeli on East 67th Street. And the guy's a legitimate junkie. He sounded like it and everything.
D. Cespedes says the drug addict arranged to get a sample document to a PLO official. The first sale brought D. Cespedes $5,000. This led to several more sales, including the one to Nadal, but D. Cespedes' luck ran out.
Somehow, the Central Intelligence Agency had infiltrated the PLO organization. They, in turn, wanted to know where the PLO was coming up with all this new information.
So without D. Cespedes' knowledge, the CIA notified the FBI, who in turn told the New York Police Department about the confidence scheme. D. Cespedes arrived for his meeting and ran into Nadal while he was waiting.
He says, are you sure you want to go in there for that money? And I said, yeah.
When he entered the room, D. Cespedes was arrested for fraud. But the PLO was so embarrassed by the incident that they were reluctant to press charges.
The end result was that I agreed not to post bail and to stay in during Mr. Arafat's visit.
Arafat canceled all other engagements that day and flew by helicopter in and out of the United Nations, canceling a score of speeches and other fundraising events. D. Cespedes says he is haunted by one thing Nadal told him.
He says to me, you know, when I have started with a dream. I'll work just as hard to make my dream true. He says, someday it may turn into a delusion, but that doesn't mean I'll work any less harder to make that come true.
That's about all the time we have left on Special Assignment for this weekend, but we would like to hear from you. If you have a comment or a story idea to suggest, write us in care of Special Assignment, and we have a new address. It is 111 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20001. Once again, that's 111 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20001. Thank you for joining us. From Atlanta, I'm Larry Woods.